You notice it on a Tuesday. The feeder is full. You filled it yourself 2 days ago and almost nothing has touched it. The yard that was busy last week. The chickadees moving through the shrubs. The juncos under the feeder. The nuthatch working the oak bark in its slow, upside-down spiral is empty. Not quiet in the way it gets at midday when birds pull back from the heat. Actually empty. You go outside and stand there for a minute. Nothing. You check the feeder again. You wonder if something scared them off. You wonder if you did something wrong. You wonder if they are coming back. They almost certainly are. But where they went and why, and what pulled them away from a yard they have been visiting reliably for weeks or months, that story is far more specific, far more coordinated, and far stranger than most people ever get told. Today we are going inside the disappearance. What triggers it, where your birds actually go, and the thing that will happen in your yard in the days before they return that almost nobody knows to look for. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the one that makes everything else make sense. And once you know it, you will never watch a quiet feeder the same way again. Number 1. Your birds did not leave because of you. This is the first thing to understand, and it matters more than people realize, because the instinct when the yard goes quiet is to run through everything you might have done differently. Was the seed bad? Did you move the feeder? Did you scare them somehow? In almost every case, the answer is none of the above. The disappearances that last for days, sometimes for a week or more, are almost never caused by something in your yard. They are caused by something happening across an area of land so much larger than your yard that your yard is essentially invisible in the calculation. Your birds are not residents of your yard. They are residents of a territory that may cover dozens or even hundreds of acres, and your yard is one node in a network of resources they move through constantly. When the whole network shifts, your yard shifts with it. The question is, what shifts the network? Number 2, the invisible food map and why it changes. Every bird that visits your feeder is running a mental map, not a vague general sense of the neighborhood, a detailed, constantly updated map of where food exists, how reliable each source is, how much competition exists at each location, and how those variables are changing over time. Researchers studying black-capped chickadees, which are among the most closely tracked small birds in North America, have found that a single chickadee's winter territory can cover 20 to 50 acres. Within that territory, the bird maintains awareness of dozens of food sources simultaneously and adjusts its movement patterns based on what has changed since its last visit to each location. When natural food sources shift, and they do constantly depending on temperature, precipitation, wind, and what other species have already taken, the entire mental map reorganizes. A stand of wild berry shrubs 3 blocks from your house that froze over last week just became accessible again after 2 days of mild weather. Every bird in the neighborhood that has that location on its map is now moving toward it. Your feeder, reliable as it is, cannot compete with a suddenly abundant natural food source, especially when that source is closer to the center of a bird's territory than your yard happens to be. Your feeder did not fail. The landscape just changed its priorities. Number 3, the weather event your birds felt before you did. Here is something most people never think about. Birds do not experience approaching weather the way we do. We check a forecast. They feel the change in barometric pressure in their bodies, sometimes 24 to 48 hours before the front arrives. Birds have pressure-sensing receptors in their inner ear, called the Vitale organ. As barometric pressure drops ahead of an incoming storm system, birds register it as a physical signal, and that signal triggers behavior. What typically happens in the 24 to 36 hours before a significant weather event is a feeding surge. Birds that have been spreading their foraging time across the morning and afternoon suddenly concentrated. They eat heavily, cache aggressively, and move with a kind of urgency that experienced birdwatchers recognize immediately. If your feeder was unusually busy for a day or two right before the quiet set in, this is likely what you were seeing. The birds knew something was coming after the storm moves through, or after the cold snap that followed it. The birds pull back from the edges of their territories and concentrate near their most sheltered and reliable resources. Depending on where your yard sits in the geography of a particular bird's territory, it may be inside that core zone or outside it. If you are outside it, your yard will be quiet until conditions relax and the bird expands its range again. Number 4. The flock dynamic you cannot see from your window. Many of the small birds in your yard, the chickadees, nuthatches, titmice, and downy woodpeckers, do not actually move through your yard as individuals. They move as a mixed species flock, a loose traveling group of birds that forage together through the winter months because traveling in a group dramatically reduces each individual's predator risk. These flocks are not fixed, they are fluid. Birds join and leave them. They split around obstacles and regroup. They shift their route through a territory based on conditions. And when a flock shifts its route, every species within it shifts with it. What this means for your yard is this: you may not be watching individual birds who have each independently decided to stop visiting. You may be watching an entire flock route that has temporarily shifted away from your corner of the neighborhood. The chickadee that disappears from your feeder has not stopped being interested in your feeder. It has been swept along with 8 or 12 other birds in a traveling group that is, for reasons having nothing to do with you, moving through a different part of the territory this week. When the flock route swings back, every species in it returns at once. This is why the return often feels sudden. One morning, the yard is empty. 2 days later, there are 6 species on the feeder before 8 a.m. The flock came back. Number 5, migration pull and the birds you lose without realizing it. Some of the birds that disappear from your yard in fall and spring are not coming back at all. Not because something went wrong, because they were never permanent residents to begin with. This is something casual bird watchers often do not fully track. Not every bird at your feeder is a year-round bird. Many are seasonal visitors, present for weeks or months before an internal biological clock, triggered by day length and hormonal changes, pulls them south or north, and they are simply gone. The white-throated sparrow that spent October through March scratching under your feeder has returned to its breeding grounds in the boreal forests of Canada. The yellow-rumped warbler that foraged in the shrubs through early spring is now 800 miles north of you. They did not disappear. They departed on a schedule older than your yard, older than your neighborhood, older than any human habitation on this land. What tends to confuse people is the overlap. Some birds are permanent residents. Some are winter visitors only. Some pass through in migration and are gone in days. They can all be at your feeder at the same time in October or April, and when the migrants leave, the feeder can look suddenly half as busy as it was a week ago, with no obvious trigger you could have observed. Number 6, the signal that your birds are about to return. This is the part that changes how you watch a quiet yard. In the day or two before a flock route swings back through your area, or before resident birds expand back out to the edges of their territory after a cold snap, there is often a scout. Not always, not in every species, but frequently enough that experienced observers have learned to watch for it. A single chickadee, a lone nuthatch, one bird, moving through the yard quickly, not stopping to eat, checking the feeder, checking the cover, moving on. What this bird is doing is assessing. The mixed species flocks that winter together are not mindless swarms. They are socially organized, and the decisions about where to forage are not random. Individual birds scout, return, and through their behavior and vocalizations influence where the group moves next. If you see a single bird come through a quiet yard, pause, look around, and leave without eating. Pay attention. There is a reasonable chance that within 24 to 48 hours, the rest will follow. The yard is not empty because the birds forgot you. The yard is quiet because the birds are somewhere else in the enormous, invisible map they carry in their heads, working through a calculation you cannot see with a precision you cannot fully imagine. And when the calculation brings them back to your corner of their world, they will come back as if they never left, because from their perspective, they didn't leave. They just moved to the part of the map you cannot see. The quiet feeder is not absence, it is distance, and the distance is always temporary. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had your yard go completely quiet for days and then suddenly come back all at once? What did it feel like when they returned? I read every one. I will see you in the next one.